So the Supreme Court recently issued a decision denying emergency review in a case which was seeking an immediate block of New York's controversial rifle and shotgun permit requirements. That denial caused a dismissal of the challenge in the Second Circuit, and now the lower court is looking to do the same thing. So let's break down what is happening in this critical challenge. Now, real quick, if you're watching this channel, then obviously it's safe to say that you care about the Second Amendment and your rights. Now, here's the thing, even law-abiding gun owners are ending up in jail because they make a bunch of critical mistakes. And those are mistakes that you don't even realize that you're making or that you don't understand that they're illegal. So I put together a free resource called the Legal Survival Guide. It's aimed to help you guys avoid all of those traps that maybe you could fall in. It takes about 2 minutes to read. It's just a simple PDF, and it really could save you years behind bars. I made it to help you guys, again, completely free to download using the link down below. It's just something that I wanted to provide you guys for free so that you can have it in your phone or maybe print it out. And there's a little card also in there that you can put in your wallet to give you additional resources to help you in situations. Obviously, not meant to be legal advice. I'm not your attorney. This isn't an attorney-client relationship, but I wanted to provide you guys some free resources to prevent you falling in some bad situations. Again, if you're interested, click the links down below. It's completely free to do. All you have to do is enter your email to get that free PDF. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be discussing an important rifle and shotgun permit case, which was recently denied emergency intervention by the United States Supreme Court. And as a result of that, it has now been thrown out by the Second Circuit. This case challenges New York City's permits, which, they have requirements that you must meet to possess a rifle or shotgun within the city. The case we're going to be talking about in this video is called Schrower versus the City of New York. The case challenges the discretionary permit system that was put in place by the City of New York. Under this permit, the police department gets to determine who meets the good moral character determinations and who gets a permit and who does not. The emergency application in this case recently went to the Supreme Court, but the case was denied emergency review. The Supreme Court denied emergency review at that time because the case and the decision was pending in front of the Second Circuit. It was sitting in front of the three-judge panel. Now, after that denial by the Supreme Court, the Second Circuit was free to essentially issue their ruling. However, the Second Circuit then took a radical approach. Instead of ruling on the case and ruling on the merits, they decided to find that the case was actually moot, and they ruled to dismiss the entire lawsuit. This has now set the case to potentially be completely thrown out by the lower court and could set up and maybe even a new emergency petition to the Supreme Court. Now, this case involves a permit scheme that is in direct defiance to what the Supreme Court recently said in their Bruin ruling. The plaintiffs argued that under Bruin, the Supreme Court struck down a similar application process that was purely discretionary. This case was brought by the plaintiff Joseph Schrower, who is challenging the constitutionality of the New York City discretionary licensing scheme and that scheme that's in place for the purchase and possession of all these rifles and shotguns. Now, on review, the district court actually did grant a permanent injunction against some of the provisions of the licensing scheme, where that required individuals to show that they were of good moral character. Essentially, you would have to show that before you even got the permit. So the court there, the lower court, found that that was unconstitutional under Bruin. That, of course, was a huge win, but of course, you also have the City of New York that then decided to appeal, and they took that up to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. New York City also sought a stay to be put in place on that permanent injunction while the case was being appealed, and the Second Circuit, of course, granted that emergency stay. At that time, an emergency application was then filed to the Supreme Court to remove that stay, specifically in regards to the good moral character determination, because it was so similar to what also was struck down in Bruin. Emergency appeal, that emergency request went to Sotomayor. However, the Supreme Court ultimately did deny the emergency application when it went to the full court. They denied review of that issue. Once the Supreme Court denied review to this and it went to the Second Circuit decided that they were not even going to review the issue. They were not going to look at the merits of the challenge. Instead, they were just going to purely kick the case. New York argued that Mr. Schrower had already received a permit since filing this lawsuit, and New York argued that means that the relief he is now seeking in the challenge has already been obtained, meaning that no relief could actually be granted by the courts and that the case should essentially be dismissed for a lack of standing. The Second Circuit stated in that order that we now hold that because Schrower has been granted the very relief he sought, the case before us is moot and we lack jurisdiction to hear the merits. They went on to state that there is no indication that the city there granted Schrower's rifle and shotgun permit to intentionally moot this case, or even that its action was related to this lawsuit. Now, there's two main considerations to overcome this whole mootness argument and the whole mutant mootness, challenges that happen, motions that happen. One being that a party tried to moot the case intentionally, and that even if the issue was moot, that the injury is likely to recur. Schrower argued to the Second Circuit that not only did the city of New York intentionally grant his permit in 2024 to moot this challenge, but also the city is still likely going to have the power to revoke or deny any renewal, and that nothing changes there, that they could essentially recur in their injury to him by, not granting renewal or revoking it whenever they wanted. The Second Circuit found that both of those arguments were unpersuasive, and on both of those issues, the Second Circuit deferred to the city's claims that they would never do that, that they did not do this intentionally, that they would never revoke his permit, they would not deny his renewal as long as, he didn't do something incorrect. Now, the district court held status conferences on this challenge, and they decided to dismiss some of the original motions that were going on with the city of New York. But then the city brought a new motion to dismiss the challenge based on what the Second Circuit said, that the case is now moot. The city is trying to get the lower court to also rule in accordance with what the Second Circuit said and find that the challenge is actually moot and should be thrown out. The plaintiffs recently filed a brief opposing that new motion to dismiss the case based on mootness, and in that brief, they argue that the complaint did not seek an order directing the police commissioner to issue any licenses to the plaintiff. So the city's voluntary issuance of a license to the plaintiff provided him with none of the relief sought in his complaint. Mr. Schrower argues in response that the Second Circuit really sidestepped the true relief that he was asking for by saying, well, you got a permit, so you've got the relief that you wanted. He argues what he really wanted was for the enforcement of the law to be permanently enjoined, and he did not get that. That type of relief he never got, and here the court should continue with this case until he gets that type of relief and that he still has standing. Now this case has gone to a bench trial in front of the district court, so we're going to wait and see how the district court decides to rule on this issue. It's going to be interesting to see, do they believe that this case is moot now just because he got a permit? And that could have a lot of implications for a lot of cases where, you would just have a locality, a city, or a state, or whoever, once they get further along in litigation, if they are having a hard time, if they're starting to lose some of these arguments in the courts, they can simply just say, yeah, we're going to issue these permits, or we're going to change some things and try to moot these challenges. And that's what we're trying to avoid in this lawsuit. This case also shows that the Supreme Court's initial denial of the emergency application had, downstream ramifications because the Second Circuit took that opportunity to not faithfully review this case. They didn't look at the merits of the arguments. Instead, they just found an easy way out, and they said that the challenge was moot, and they decided to kick it and throw it out. This is one of those challenges that I could see once again going all the way up and eventually making its way to the Supreme Court once again. This would probably be on a final merits finally because the issue was dismissed based on mootness. And so that was kind of a final resolution. But even in all this, we haven't even got to the core of the issues, the merits arguments, because at every turn, you have the Second Circuit trying to avoid that issue, and you have kind of a lot of these courts trying to avoid that issue and not really look at the Second Amendment and the merits-based arguments. So that's what's currently going on in this critical permit challenge, permits to get rifles and shotguns in a city. That's one of those critical issues that's in place in a lot of cities and a lot of states. So this is a permit challenge based on a possession permit, and they're trying to use the Supreme Court Bruin case to override those type of permit systems. So as we get more information, as this develops, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to simply subscribe to the channel. Also, you can check out my website, armscholar.com, or you can get the free legal guide that we have. I will link that down below for the free legal guide. All you have to do is put in your email, and then you get the free PDF. And then also we'll do some follow-up emails with free educational information to kind of keep you guys updated with some of the things that are going on. But as always, thank you guys so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by Armed Scholars, and this nation will be maintained by Armed Scholars.